My name's Asa, and I'm making a roguelike rhythm game called Rogue Rhythm. I made this dungeon generation, and I wanted to go over how I did it. So I based it off of Realm of the Mad Gods, their dungeon called Lost Halls, and it has this grid system here. And the objective is to start here and to get to the boss room, wherever it is. And the boss room takes up a 3x3 area, and all the other rooms take up a 1x1 area. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of how I did it and how you can do it, as well as generating structures in different rooms, things like shops or power-ups or whatever else you want to include in there randomly. Also enemies as well. And I hope this will give you a good starting point. Is how you want to start is you want to start by generating a place with the boss room. So what you want to do, I can go through a little bit of my script. Basically, I have this void generate boss room. My grid, it used to be 10 by 10. And if the grid is 10 by 10, then you can only have 8 possible X positions and 8 possible Y positions. And what I'm considering the boss room is this is the center tile is the position of the boss room. So obviously the boss room can't be here because then its edges will be off of the screen. So you want to keep it within this area. And the reason you want to do that is so that you can, when the player is actually playing and they're coming from the start, let's say that they're hugging this wall on the left, they know that if they want to reach the boss room, they probably want to go towards the right, because that's just like how mathematics works. Like you want to get away from the wall because you know it can't generate on the left side, so it's probably generally on the right side, right? So you could do it that way, or obviously you could just generate the boss room, generate the rooms, and then you're done. But I find it that this works better, and it's also a better experience for the player because it's less random. They can do more things to get to the end of the quote-unquote maze more consistently. So what I do is I generate that boss room, and then I generate the opening of where it will go. And obviously that opening can't be into the wall. So if it's near the wall, the opening can't be against the wall. So I do I choose it randomly. And if it's like against this wall, and let's say I choose go west randomly, then it'll be like, oh wait, you can't go west. Let's run the code again, knowing that you can't go west. So it's going to choose it randomly again. It's like, oh, we can only have 3 more options. So then it chooses another option, and if it can't do that one, it just repeats and repeats. And I do that for not only the boss room, but every single room. So after I choose the boss room, I choose the opening, and then I generate a room. So now that I generated one room and a one room out from the boss room, I basically repeat the same process. I choose a random direction, which doesn't contain a room. So in this case, I would be able to go up, right, and down, but I wouldn't be able to go left because there's a room there, just the boss room. And I just rinse and repeat that random. I set a hard limit, and that hard limit is just X. I can change it whenever I want. But let's say I set the hard limit to 20. So now I know that the limit is 20, which means the player starting from the start, they will move 20 rooms to get to the boss room if they don't take any wrong turns. So that just helps you so that they aren't stuck there, you know, for ages going so far. And that helps you control too, because I have different like levels and different stages. So there's like floor 1. And if I just generate floor 1 and then I go to the scene view and I go to grid, it's only going to be a certain size. But if I go to my resources and I go to floors, they all have different values. So floor 1, the boss navigation max, it's only the max amount is 20, while this one is 23, and while this one's 26. And you can also see boss navigation minimum 7, 8, and 9, right? And I'm not a good programmer, okay? I can't guarantee that it will be at least that amount. I can't guarantee that it will be 7. Because what can happen is the boss room generates here, and it decides, oh, let's go left. Oh, let's go down. Oh, let's go down. Let's go right. And now it's going into a corner. And you basically have to like map out determining if it's going to move into a corner and be a dead end is a little bit too advanced for me. So what I do is if it generates a room and if it's less than 7, then it'll just regenerate. And I do that like 4 times. And if it just does not cooperate with me and it decides, no, I want to do a room with 7 or less 4 times in a row, which is pretty unlikely, then I'll just be like, I'll just let it be. And whatever, the player gets to have a 7 room or less. All right, so now you have a general idea of how to get from the boss room to your starting room. But now you need to add splits. So you can see here I have split length and split count, and I can change that dynamically. So the split length is going to be the max amount of rooms from the split until you reach a dead end, because you don't want your player to go and start traveling. Oh, he traveled for 5. He traveled 5 rooms, he traveled 6 rooms, he traveled 7 rooms, and he's still not reaching the dead end. And oh, he reaches the dead end, and now he has to travel all the way back. So I limit that to 4 for this case. And first of all, the reason that you want to do it this way is because if you generate the first from the starting room to the boss room and then you make branches off of the splits, that means that any place that there are 2 options, one of those options is the correct option. So basically, if there is a split, there cannot be a split off of a split, because that would just be far too complicated. So the player would be going through so many rooms just to backtrack. But if they go through one way and it's a dead end, they know, okay, let me just go the original way that had the second option. And split count is pretty self-explanatory. That's just the max amount of splits that can come off of the branch. I can explain a little bit deeper about how I am calculating where rooms are and how I am setting them. So basically what I do is if I go to here, generation, which one is it? Dungeon generation. Do not copy me, okay? Do not copy me. I'm not gonna lie, do not copy me. I think this is just terrible practice. I have, oh God. I have this array. It has 900 elements, okay? It has 900 elements. And it used to have 100 elements because my grid was 10 by 10. And what I would do is I would correlate the position of each room and I would put it inside of the element. So for example, I think I actually started up here. So I think this would be element 0. Like let's say it's a 10 by 10 grid, you would imagine it's 10 by 10. This would be element 0, element 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, blah, 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 blah. So I would do it that way. And then every time that I generated one, I would put it inside of its proper element number. And then when I want to check if a room is there, I would just check its element number and see if it's there. And then for the boss room, since it's 3 by 3, I would just make it take up the appropriate element numbers for its position. And then I would check if the boss room is there in that element number. But now I have a room, now I have a dungeon, which is like 25 something, like 20 by 20, 25 by 25. And I just made it 900 because it'll work the same no matter how high it is. It just needs to be at least the right number. So I was like, I don't even know how much it's supposed to be. I'm just going to make it a stupid high number. I don't need to worry about it and I can expand it if I want. So that's what I did. I made it 900 and it'll just work. And I don't think this is good practice. There has to be a better way, but I don't like looking up tutorials and this is the way that I thought to do it. So I did do it. And if I actually show you my inventory system, which actually I'm not sure if I have any items saved. Yeah, I don't have any items saved, but basically my inventory system works the exact same way because I can basically drag items in between each square, and then I correlate each item's position to see if an item is there, so to see if I can drag and drop it onto that spot. You can also see I have hallways. So hallways are a different array element, a different array, and honestly, I forgot. I think the only reason why I put hallways in a list is so that I can set their color depending on the floor. So just give it some more customization. I don't think it actually has any function. So that's basically how I do it. I first get the boss room and then I go to the start. I set a cap to that. And I also set a minimum to regenerate if it's not that minimum. And then I set the rooms and I generate rooms. And the rooms are just tile maps. They're prefab and I just instantiate them. So now we can move on to the enemies. So if I generate a map here, let's generate a map. And I have some enemies here. Okay, so these little things, these are enemies. Basically how my grid movement is, it just works like this. So it'll unhide as I move through it. And if I run into an enemy, a guy comes out, slime, and now I'm fighting. Okay. So I have these enemies. So it's probably gonna be different for your game, but I'm just gonna say how I did it. I have these enemies that are stationary, and obviously you can add AI yours and make them move around. But how I do it is, how do I do it? I don't know. Um, I I choose I get the amount of floors, and depending on the amount of floors, you can see here, the enemy max, the max amount of enemies that there can be, is the room total divided by the enemy rarity. And the enemy rarity I change by per floor. You can see here, enemy rarity, that's 4. So in a map with 40 floors, which is I think is about average for a 10 by 10 map, at least by that I remember, there would be a maximum of 10 enemies. So that would be a maximum of 10 of one enemy per 4 rooms. But that is a lot of enemies. So what I did is I made it a random chance for each room to contain an enemy. And I believe there's a 30% chance for a room to contain an enemy. And every time that it adds an enemy, it increases the enemy count. And then if the enemy count is less than the enemy max, we just keep adding enemies. But it's pretty unlikely we reach that enemy max. And that's basically it. Other than that, I added some code for the colors. So you can see that floor 1 has certain colors. It's like this gray here. But I changed it so you see floor 2 it's a little bit more red. And I think that just gives some good variety to the game and the feeling of progression. And it also allows the players to have some new sights and colors, which could help with player engagement. Other than that, the player, you can see the player, you have to take into account the spawn room condition, the spawn room position. So what I do is after I generate from the boss room to the spawn room, before I add the splits, I set the spawn room tag. I set that room to spawn. And then at the end, after I add the splits, and I can spawn the player inside the spawn room, and now I know which one that is. You could probably add things, just like you added the enemies in each room, you can probably also add things like shops or like perks or whatever you want to add using that same random concept. And yeah, so I think this is a pretty easy way to make a grid system dungeon generation if you're going to do it this way. So that's the main without the splits, and check full. Oh, I think this is to regenerate the minimum. And then void split, I do the splits. Check the splits, see how long they are, spawn the enemies. Unhide, this is for unhiding the rooms as I travel through them. And then regenerating. There's a lot of different components, a lot of different ideas, things you could go from here. I think that this is a great introduction, at least for me, for going into dungeon generation. This is my first experience with it. I think it worked pretty well, and I'm happy with it. So I hope this helped you, and I'm going to leave a link in the description of a log in my Discord if you want to check it out.